Welcome back. You are listening to the home of forbidden romances. Prepare yourself, because tonight's story will leave you breathless. The barrel of the gun pressed cold and steady against the center of his forehead, but Cashin Ryu didn't even blink. He just smiled, that devastating, arrogant smile that had haunted my nightmares for 3 agonizing years. "Pull it, Julian," Cashin whispered, his voice a velvet rasp that cut through the thunder rattling the windows of my squalid apartment. "If you truly hate me for what I did that night, put a bullet in the brain that couldn't stop thinking about you." He took a step forward, forcing the muzzle harder against his skin, effectively breaking the distance between us. Rainwater dripped from his black trench coat, pooling on the cheap linoleum floor, mixing with the mud on his expensive Italian leather shoes. He looked like a fallen god standing in a dumpster, impeccable, terrifying, and painfully out of place in the hidden district of Sector 4 where I had buried my past. "You don't get to walk in here," I hissed, my hand trembling not from fear, but from the visceral rage vibrating in my marrow. "You don't get to find me. I own the city now, my shadow," Cashin replied, his eyes dark pools of obsidian that seemed to swallow the dim light of the room. He reached up, his fingers, long, pale, and usually stained with ink or blood, wrapping around the barrel of my gun. He lowered it slowly to his chest, right over his heart. "I turned the world upside down to find the one thing I lost. Did you think a few borders and a fake name could hide you from the monster you created?" My breath hitched. He wasn't supposed to look at me like that. Not like I was precious. Not after he discarded me like a broken toy. To understand why I wanted to kill him, and why my finger refused to squeeze the trigger, you have to understand who we were. I wasn't just a man to him. I was Julian Vane, the orphan taken in by the Ryu Syndicate, raised to be a sword, a shield, a dog on a leash. And Cashin? He was the heir. The crown prince of a criminal empire that spanned continents. We were the classic tragedy. The master and the servant. But in the shadows of the Ryu estate, in the quiet moments between assassinations and board meetings, we had become something volatile, something forbidden. The air in the apartment grew heavy, suffocating with the scent of ozone and Cashin's expensive sandalwood cologne. 3 years, I said, my voice cracking. You left me in that hotel room, bleeding, alone. I didn't leave you, Cashin corrected, his tone dropping an octave, losing its mocking edge. I set you free. Free, I laughed, a bitter, jagged sound. Is that what you call it? Let's remember that night clearly, Cashin. Because I remember every second. The flashback hit me like physical vertigo. It was the night of the Solstice Gala. The chandeliers of the Grand Hall had been shattered by gunfire. We had barely made it out, stumbling into the safe-house penthouse, adrenaline pumping through our veins like battery acid. I had taken a knife to the shoulder meant for him. The wound was deep, jagged, and poured crimson down my white dress shirt, ruining the silk. I had collapsed onto the plush carpet of the safe house, gasping for air, clutching the wound. Cashin had been frantic. That was the first time I saw the mask slip. The icy, unfeeling heir of the Ryu clan fell to his knees beside me, his hands shaking as they hovered over my injury. You idiot, he had snarled, ripping his own tie off to bind the wound. You reckless, stupid fool. Who told you to jump? My job. I had wheezed, vision blurring. Guard the asset. You are not a tool, he had screamed, the raw emotion in his voice shocking me into silence. He dragged me up, half carrying me to the sofa. He applied pressure, his face pale, sweat beading on his hairline. The danger had passed. The assassins were dead, but the energy between us hadn't dissipated. It had transmuted into something darker, hotter. Pain makes you bold. Blood loss makes you honest. As he leaned over me, checking my pupils for shock, I had reached up. My blood-stained hand cupped his cheek, smearing red across his pale, porcelain skin. Cashin, I whispered, dropping the honorifics. Why are you shaking? He froze. His gaze locked with mine, and in that moment the hierarchy dissolved. There was no heir, no bodyguard. Just 2 men who had survived death too many times. Because, he breathed, leaning down until his lips hovered inches from mine. I realize tonight that if you die, I will burn this entire city to ash just to serve as your funeral pyre. And then he kissed me. It wasn't a romance novel kiss. It was violence. It was desperation. He kissed me like he wanted to devour me, to breathe my air because he couldn't generate his own. His teeth clashed against mine. His hands gripped my hair, tilting my head back. I tasted iron, blood from my lip, blood from his split knuckle. It was messy and wet and terrified. It was a kiss of possession. For a moment, amidst the pain and the metallic taste, I felt a soaring hope. I thought, this is it. He loves me. We break the rules tonight. I pulled back, gasping, my forehead resting against his. Do you love me? I asked. The question hung in the air, fragile as glass. Cashin stared at me. The heat in his eyes cooled instantly, replaced by a terrifying, shuttered void. He stood up, wiping the blood from his mouth with the back of his hand. He looked down at me, and the cruelty returned to his features. A mask he wore like armor. Love? He scoffed. Love is a liability, Julian. And you are just a broken shield. You're compromised. He turned his back on me. I'll have the medic patch you up. By dawn, I want you gone. I don't need a bodyguard who can't keep himself from getting stabbed. He walked out of the room. He walked out of the safe house. I waited until dawn. He never came back. The heartbreak was worse than the knife wound. The realization that I was disposable, that the kiss was just an adrenaline-fueled mistake, shattered me. So I didn't just leave the safe house. I liquidated my offshore accounts, burned my passport, and vanished. I left the country, left the continent, and buried Julian Vane. I asked if you loved me. I whispered in the present, the memory still stinging like fresh antiseptic. And you walked away. Cashin's grip on the gun tightened, pressing it harder against his chest. I walked away because if I had stayed, I would have never let you leave. And if you hadn't left, my father would have killed you. The revelation hung in the air. What? The assassination attempt wasn't random, Julian, Cashin said, his voice strained. It was a test. My father wanted to see if I had a weakness, if I had shown favor to you, if I had kept you by my side after you took that hit. He would have seen you as the leverage to control me. He would have had you tortured to keep me in line. He took a step closer, crowding me against the peeling wallpaper of the hallway. I had to be cruel, Cashin said, his voice breaking. I had to make you hate me. I had to make you run so far away that his spies couldn't find you. It was the only way to keep you alive. You could have told me, I argued, though my resolve was crumbling. We could have fought him together. No, Cashin shook his head. I wasn't the dragon head then. I didn't have the power. I do now. He let go of the gun and reached into his coat pocket. My muscles tensed, but he didn't pull a weapon. He pulled out a small velvet box. My father is dead, Cashin said flatly. I killed him 3 days ago. The empire is mine. The threats are gone. I spent 3 years clawing my way to the top of a mountain of corpses for one reason. He opened the box. Inside wasn't a ring. It was my old dog tags, the ones I had thrown into the trash bin at the safe house before I fled. He had kept them. I didn't come here to drag you back to servitude, Cashin said, his eyes pleading now. I came to ask you to come home, not as a shield, not as a servant. He dropped to his knees. The sight of Cashin Ryu, the man who made prime ministers tremble, kneeling on the dirty floor of a Sector 4 apartment made my head spin. It was an impossible image, a contradiction of the natural order. Come back as my partner, he whispered, looking up at me with a vulnerability that terrified me more than his anger ever had. Rule with me, or kill me. Those are the only 2 options, Julian. Because I cannot spend another sunrise knowing you are out here, believing I didn't love you. I looked down at him. I looked at the gun in my hand. Logic told me to run. He was dangerous. He was toxic. His world was filled with blood and betrayal. But as I looked at the man kneeling in the mud, the man who had torn down his own dynasty just to make it safe for me to exist within it, I felt the ice around my heart crack. The power dynamic had shifted. He wasn't the master anymore. He was the supplicant. And I held the judgment. I lowered the gun. I didn't safe it. I just let it hang by my side. "You're a fool," I said softly. "I am," he agreed. "I'm your fool. If I come back," I said, my voice gaining strength, "things change. I don't take orders. I don't walk 3 steps behind. You walk beside me," Cashin vowed. "Or you walk ahead. I don't care, as long as you're there." I sighed, the anger draining out of me, leaving only a profound exhaustion and a spark of something that felt dangerously like hope. I reached out, threading my fingers through his damp, dark hair, tilting his face up. "Get up, Cashin," I commanded. "You're ruining your suit." He stood, towering over me once again, but the energy was different. He leaned in, hesitant this time, giving me the choice. "That night," I whispered, "you kissed me bloody." "I know," he murmured, his gaze dropping to my lips. "Do it again," I challenged. "But get it right this time." He didn't hesitate. He crashed his mouth against mine, and it was still desperate, still violent, but it wasn't a goodbye. It was a collision of 3 years of starvation. His hands gripped my waist, pulling me flush against him, soaking my shirt with the rain from his coat. Tasted like rain. Tasted like redemption. It tasted like a promise that the only blood spilt from now on would be that of anyone who tried to separate us. When he pulled back, breathless, his forehead resting against mine, he whispered the words I had waited a lifetime to hear. "I love you, Julian. I loved you when I pushed you away, and I love you now that I have you back." I dropped the gun. It hit the floor with a heavy thud, sealing our pact. "Show me," I said. "Take me home, and show me the empire you built for us." Cashin smiled, and this time it reached his eyes. "Gladly." And that is how the shield finally broke the sword, proving that even in the coldest hearts, fire can burn if you are willing to bleed for it. If you enjoyed seeing the mighty Cashin Ryu on his knees begging for forgiveness, destroy that like button. And tell me in the comments, would you forgive a lover who broke your heart to save your life? Or is the lie unforgivable? I'll be reading your answers. Subscribe for the next chapter. Until then,